We're going to talk about a story where the crime itself was over in a single night, but the legal battle that followed has now stretched on for more than 34 years. We're going to unpack the Parker family murders and the incredibly long shadow they've cast over the justice system. Our story starts on February 2nd, 1990, in a quiet, rural part of Mississippi. You know, for the Parker family, it started out like any other evening, but by the next morning, their story would become one of the most infamous in the entire state's history. The actual crime was swift, brutal, and over in a matter of hours. But the fight for justice? Well, that's been a slow, grinding process that even today still doesn't have a clear ending. It's a case that really makes you ask, what does justice even mean when it takes an entire lifetime? So to really get a grip on the decades that followed, we have to go back to that one horrific night. Who were the Parkers, and what exactly happened inside their home? This was the Parker family. Carl, a local farmer and a veteran. His wife, Bobby Jo, who taught piano, and their two kids, Gregory and Charlotte Jo, who were just 12 and 9 years old. From everything we know, they were a quiet family, really involved in their church and their community. So they're coming home from Bible study, and they walk right into a complete nightmare. Two men, Anthony Carr and Robert Simon Jr., were in the middle of burglarizing their home. The family was ambushed, tied up, and then subjected to hours of torture before they were shot. And the final brutal act? The killers set the house on fire, trying to burn away every last piece of evidence. When investigators showed up, what they found was just total devastation. The fire had taken almost everything. So the challenge they faced was huge. How in the world do you solve a crime when the crime scene itself has literally been turned to ash? The first break came when a driver just happened to see the flames and called it in. Inside, firefighters made the awful discovery. The investigation could have stalled right there, but the next morning they got their first major clue. The family's stolen pickup truck was found abandoned. And from there, the dominoes fell fast, leading them straight to two suspects, Anthony Carr and Robert Simon Jr. So the arrests were made, but this was just the beginning of a whole new chapter. The crime had so horrified the local community that just finding an impartial jury felt nearly impossible, and it forced the state to take some pretty extraordinary and expensive steps. The pre-trial publicity was so intense, there was no way they could hold the trials in that county. And the cost of moving everything, the security, it was just staggering for a small rural area. In fact, Quitman County had to take out a loan for $250,000. Think about that, a huge sum back in 1990, just to be able to prosecute the case. Okay, so here's where things get a little complicated because the two men were tried separately. Anthony Carr, he faced one trial for all four murders, and thanks in part to an inmate who testified that Carr had bragged about the killings, he got 4 death sentences. Simple enough. But Robert Simon Jr.'s case was split. First, he was tried only for the murder of 9-year-old Charlotte Jo, and for that, he got a life sentence. It was only in a second separate trial for the other 3 murders that he was sentenced to death. Now, this small difference would end up having huge consequences down the line. All right, so the verdicts are in. You'd think that's the end of it, right? A sense of closure? Well, not even close. This was actually just the beginning of a legal saga that would stretch across more than 3 decades. For years, the sentences seemed set in stone. But then, in 2002, a landmark Supreme Court case called Atkins v. Virginia changed everything. The court ruled that executing individuals with intellectual disabilities was unconstitutional, a form of cruel and unusual punishment. This was a massive deal, a real game changer that sent shockwaves through the justice system and gave death row inmates everywhere, including Carr and Simon, a brand new way to appeal their sentences. So, this new ruling kicks off this endless cycle of starts and stops. Both men's legal teams immediately filed appeals, arguing they were mentally incompetent and couldn't be executed under this new Atkins ruling. Robert Simon came literally just hours away from his execution in 2011, before a federal court swooped in with a stay at the last minute. While Carr's appeals have been consistently shot down, Simon's case is just stuck in limbo, with delays continuing as recently as late 2023. And all this time, while the lawyers are fighting it out in court, what about the family, the ones who lost everything? Carl Parker's son from a previous marriage, Scott Parker, really captured the deep frustration and pain his family felt with this quote. It's a powerful reminder of the human cost of these endless legal battles. So after all of this, after more than 3 decades of legal fighting, where are we now? Where does one of the most gruesome murder cases in Mississippi history actually stand today? Well, for the two men, their situations are pretty different. For Anthony Carr, his legal road has pretty much hit a dead end. He's still on death row. But for Robert Simon Jr., the fight goes on. His execution is on hold indefinitely while the courts continue to debate this question of his mental competency. And here's the final, just really tragic part of this whole story. The two sons who waited so long for what they considered justice, they're not even alive anymore to see the final outcome. Both Dean and Scott Parker passed away in recent years, a somber reminder of just how incredibly long this case has been dragged out. And that really leaves us with a tough question, doesn't it? When a legal process drags on for more than a generation, so long that it outlives the immediate survivors, it really forces you to think about what justice even is. What does it look like? And can it ever truly be achieved after so much time has passed?